Good evening and welcome to the Job Search Solution, the radio program where we talk about looking for a job, changing jobs, changing careers, hiring. And as always, we begin with a prayer. Dear God, grant us thy peace and thy mercy, thy will be done. And in just a few minutes, Rich Levinski is going to be with us talking about consultants in the workplace. He's got some great ideas about what's going on in the marketplace. I wanted to share with you a story that happens probably way more than anybody ever thinks about or anybody wants to admit. And this has to do with one of the hiring processes that went on that I'm in the process of experiencing with a number of my candidates. Now, I probably experience a story like this at least 3 or 4 times a month. Keep in mind, I've been doing this for 49 years. I place 10 people a month on average, and I'm probably involved in at least 30 interviewing cycles. And keep in mind that I'm only one recruiter. And even though I am a little beyond average, I still experience a very minute group of hiring processes. And what made me think of this is that this kind of thing goes on all the time. And people aren't aware of it. And I bring it up because it's an untold story that not everybody wants to admit. So here goes. 7 months ago, John, a regional manager for a multi-billion-dollar company that has had one of his better people retire. So John started looking for her replacement. He rather quickly found a really good candidate, but his hiring process took so long that he wound up losing that candidate after 6 weeks because the candidate found another job. So John needed to start all over. We got involved in the situation about this time and encouraged John to find 2 or 3 great candidates and take them all through the process at the same time, especially since his interviewing process was so long and he was likely going to be losing 1 or 2 of them along the way. And he said, of course, I'll do that, but he didn't. Now, let me share with you what his process was. And this was a new process that this company developed so that they wouldn't make a mistake in hiring. The first interview would be with John over the phone, and then maybe a week or so later, he would meet with the candidate. The second step was that the candidate would meet with one of his potential peers. Now, that took usually another week or so to arrange because the peers were busy. The third step, the candidate would need to meet with 2 of John's peers in different parts of the country. And for some reason, they insisted that the candidate meet with both of these people at the same time via a Teams interview, which meant that they had to coordinate convenient times for 2 managers to be available at the same time. And the first time they could coordinate a meeting like this was at least 2 weeks in advance. And the first time they did it, one of them had to cancel it. So they had to coordinate another meeting. And that took another 3 weeks. And then if the candidate passed all of that, he'd meet with John again, and then he'd meet with John's vice president. Obviously, no one's gotten past the 4th step in the process. Fortunately, one candidate is still available. Unfortunately, one of the interviewing managers could only be available for a 30-minute Teams call and didn't like the candidate because the candidate didn't seem to have enough energy. Now, how you can tell that in a 30-minute Teams call, I have absolutely no idea. But he nixed the candidate. So John didn't feel comfortable in pushing the candidate through at the objection of one of his peers. So now he had to start all over. It bears mentioning that when John hired the last employee that he has to put that employee on plan. So within about 6 weeks, John is going to be looking for 2 people. Now, it was the end of the quarter, So John had to spend 2 weeks with his people trying to do deals and couldn't meet with any candidates. During those 2 weeks, he started interviewing again. And so that's where we are. We just started again. One of my grandkids gave me a cold, so sorry. Now, please understand that John is a 10-year experienced manager and has more than 15 years in the business. He's really good at what he does. In fact, he's a good manager and one of the nicest people that you ever met. Part of the problem is that his company, instead of just letting him interview and hire the way he used to, instituted a new process of interviewing and hiring to keep from making hiring mistakes. As of this week, John is in the 7th month of trying to hire somebody. Within a couple of weeks, he's going to be looking for 2 people instead of 1. And obviously, the longer it goes, the harder it is to find good people. John's lucky because he has a lot of credibility in his company. Most managers would be criticized for taking so long to hire. It's really hard for most people to imagine just how many times this kind of thing happens. I'd be willing to bet it happens at least 40, maybe 50% of the time. It happens a lot. Most folks will never admit to this kind of stuff. They'll go on doing what they're doing, assuming everybody understands. Companies and the people in them should think about the cost of this process as they invent them. All right, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. This is Tony Bashara with the Job Search Solution.